So the Settler Colonial Project is going forward in ways that are really almost like unbelievable. Now the new nation state law has actually given the permission to censor, sanction, kick out, including this man that I was speaking with, the director of human rights, to deport out of Israel because of critique, a Human Rights Watch type of critique, which is a very liberal critique, really, that doesn't, for as far as most people are concerned, doesn't really scratch the surface of what's going on in Israel. And yet, he's being deported because of the new nation state law that censors criticism and dissent. So it's really profound, and something we keep saying, those of us who are observing for decades, because I'm old. We keep saying this cannot go on. Israelis themselves actually keep saying, and many of them are extremely progressive and are opposed to the policies. And we're not talking about Netanyahu versus the liberals. I mean, it's the system, you know. Keep saying this cannot go on, but you know, it goes on. Power
Settlements get bigger.
Settlements get bigger, and then people inside Israel who are of Arab descent, Palestinian Christians and Muslims, live as second-class citizens.
I think that's the bottom line. Second-class citizenship, no autonomy, no sovereignty, no decision-making power. So,
But the trauma that you described in Puerto Rico, do you think if there were a referendum for independence, the move
no,
to
that
Puerto
wouldn't
Rico would
change
change?
anything. That wouldn't change anything because the issue is that it's always about 50-50. So about 50% want the status quo, 50% want to be part of the United States as a state. And also it's always been the chicken and the egg question. Congress says, well, Puerto Rico has to decide, but in Puerto Rico say, no, we don't have any power. Congress is the one who ultimately has the power, right? So it's always this type of discourse. It's not only a discourse, it's a political dynamic that it exists. And also parties are so powerful in Puerto Rico that you have a lot of polarization in that way.
And what's the presence of, I know that there was an out migration or an internal migration from Puerto Rico to the continental US. Do we have estimates on how many Puerto Ricans moved and what the ratio of population is that lives in the continental US?
After a
versus on Puerto
hurricane
Rico?
or before?
After the hurricane.
After a hurricane, I think about 50,000.
That's a
But
lot.
right now is a little, the numbers are a bit unstable because many people are
Right.
going back. So in a couple of years we'll know. But for sure to Florida,
And the pre-hurricane population was,
about 3 million.
yeah.
I have a question about your presentation. You mentioned that there was forced sterilization in Puerto Rico. Was that because of race? Is that why the U.S. decided to do that?
Well, that was
Was
in
it
the
racial?
1940s, 1950s. It was part of it, but it's also the whole package of how is it was a project of modernization, right? So in part it was, okay, you have to use different type of methods, so families become smaller, and they used women in Puerto Rico as guinea pigs by different types of pharmaceuticals and, scientific projects as well. Some of them that were funded by universities. So not only from the United States, but I live in the Netherlands and in the place where they invented the pill, and that was someone told me, oh, we experimented with Puerto
Is
Rican
this-
women. Yeah.
Before or after Nuremberg?
I'm not sure.
Around the same
Yeah,
time.
more or less
Yeah.
the same time.
Okay.
1940s, 50s.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Interesting.
Can I ask you a question? When you were in Puerto Rico, especially during this time, were there any kind of parallels or connections made between Puerto Rico and Hawaii? Because from what I've read and researchers that I know have written, there's also a similar sort of approach by the indigenous people in Hawaii about whether Hawaii is actually a state or a colonial project. I guess
No,
the
no, I
vicinity was
think in general the Hawaiian project doesn't resonate with Puerto Ricans. I guess because it happened a long time ago.
And maybe
So,
they're not
no.
familiar with it.
Yeah, many people actually migrated to Hawaii, but that happened a long time ago. So I think people are not really familiar with it.
I think Washington DC is the closer political case to Puerto Rico in
Right.
terms of a large
And
population.
the Virgin Islands, kind of,
Guam.
because it's closer, right, in terms of geography.
What are the ways in which we should think of Puerto Rico as in a different category compared to Guam or American Samoa or Virgin Islands or Northern
Yeah, each
Mariana
one
Islands?
of them have their specific conditions that I'm not really familiar in terms of the nuances. For example, I think the Virgin Islands doesn't have to comply with the Jones Act.
Okay.
And in terms of representation, it's the same. You have
Yeah.
one elected without a voting
Without
power.
vote, same as DC.
Exactly.
But
So-
DC has at least electoral college votes,
Right.
and none of the territories do.
And, you know, geographically, it will give them the advantage, right? So
Right.
just the fact that, as Trump said, which, you know, is partially true, it's an island, right? So
Yeah. The level of autonomy, or I mean, lack of autonomy, is similar. I don't know enough about each case to know how similar.
No, in Puerto Rico, we have more autonomy than DC.
Than DC.
DC. It seems that just looking at the case of DC, Congress decided to give those powers to DC, while in Puerto Rico we have a constitution with an autonomous government.
Right, right.
But legally speaking, it's a very confusing case
Yeah.
because it's like a state but without taxing and without decision-making power. So
Right.
it's a unique case in that way.
First of all, thank you all. This was really, really lovely. And Bassam, thank you for organizing it. This is really great. And just two quick questions. One is for Marieli. I wonder if the concepts from Agamben of state of exception might actually be really useful for like the Jones Act in terms of like taking that space, but not actually positively filling it, but creating like a negative where you have to, it's like the space for recovery is almost taken by law and by the US, but then doesn't act. So
Right.
it's sort of the extension of the law, but refusing application of the law at the same time. That's sort of, and so that's sort of one question, and also the shock doctrine if the applicant. And then a question for Jo Marie, was that general trained by the U.S. School of the Americas?
I'll just answer that one real quick because
I
yes,
don't-
he was.
Okay.
All of the 4 military officials who were convicted last May were trained in the School of the Americas.
Thank you.
I don't know if we are allowed to discuss Agamben at the Shar School or as book of scientists, are we? Sorry, I had to say.
No, I think, no, first of all, Naomi Klein is like the hero now in Puerto Rico. She was there, so everyone is talking about her. But in terms of, I think the fundamental question is how do we get out of this, right? And legally speaking, there's no way to really escape it, right? Because with the Jones Act, we are entrapped in this type of relationship that doesn't allow us to develop and create our own political model, economic model, I mean, and just to achieve economic independence, and that's one of the issues. And also you have to look at it from, it's not colonialism only from the kind of the political perspective that we normally look at, but you know, if you look at the data, how much the multinational companies get out of Puerto Rico in terms of capital is huge, right? And also other type of things like Social Security we pay into it, Medicare, for example, FEMA, when you buy a house in Puerto Rico, you have to pay a fee for FEMA. So this discourse that you hear often about how is it that Puerto Rico is free riding is not really accurate because the mainland and companies do get a big part of the cake in terms of the benefits and the profits.
Yeah. Do you think that actually surfacing that powerfully could be part of a mechanism of changing the laws?
I don't think so. It's path dependency all the way. It's a really sad situation.
I'm thoroughly depressed now about
I know,
humanity
this was not
and the
supposed.
state of the world.
It's my
and I have to
fault.
go have office hours.
I
So
know.
I apologize.
It's my fault
Excuse
because this
myself.
was supposed to be more like, you know, casual, and it turned out to be very serious. I'm sorry if people came for like more exciting.
No, this is great.
It's good.
This is.
That's life in the
Well,
It's the
tropics.
state of the world. It's the state
Thank
we
you.
live in.
Thank
And
you
it's
all.
not